Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, Hugh Freeze and Auburn. Boy, do we have a lot to talk about. There's two different conversations we need to get into. Is number one, how much time are we willing to give Hugh Freeze to get things right running this program? Because look, I'm on Twitter and I'm on the message boards with y'all, and I know there's a growing amount of Auburn fans that are ready to move on from Hugh Freeze. So that's the first question we have to answer. The second question is, if Auburn does decide to move on from Hugh Freeze, whether that be Sunday morning after a loss against Arkansas, whether that's at the end of the year in 2025, who is the coach that we think can get this program right? I certainly have some takes on that. And let me start with this. This job's going to be really attractive, man. I don't think many people realize how attractive this job can be. And why do I say that? Why do I get up here and say, hey, Auburn, it's a really attractive job? Look at how much firepower Hugh Freeze was given over the last couple of off seasons to get this thing right. Like Auburn went from, and let's just be straight up about it, when Hugh Freeze took over this program, it was one of the least talented teams that you saw in this conference. You fast forward to where we sit right now, I firmly believe it, even with Auburn's four straight losses, I firmly believe this is one of the more talented rosters that you see in this conference. Hugh Freeze is given all the resources he needs. He could go get any quarterback he wanted. He chose Jackson Arnold. Brought in guys like Cam Coleman and Perry Thomas from the high school ranks, went out and got guys like Xavier Chaplin, Eric Singleton in the portal. If you are a sitting head coach or you're a guy like James Franklin and you're trying to figure out, hey, where do I want to coach my next program at? I know I'm going to have the resources at Auburn because I just saw Hugh Freeze be given every single resource possible to get the roster he needs to win. He's just not winning. So I want to start with how much time we're going to give Hugh Freeze. Want to talk about some coaches that I think would be really good fits at Auburn before we get into it, as always, to the Auburn fans. And this is important. Number one, many of y'all have been rocking with the boys for a very long time, and I cannot thank you guys enough. Number two, I might say some things and have some takes that maybe the Auburn fans don't agree with, or at least some Auburn fans don't. That's the beauty of it, right? I'm not going to get up here and pretend like my opinion on this situation is fact, is the truth. Would love to hear from the Auburn fans that maybe disagree a little bit. Appreciate you guys. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Without further ado, let's get into it. Now, let's talk about the pros of Hugh Freeze. Why might you want to at least give Hugh Freeze till the end of 2025? Number one, I think they have the opportunity to win every other game on their schedule. That's no different from the first half of the season. Auburn had a chance to win every single game in the first half, too. I mean, what is the downside of, hey, saying, let's see if you can go finish 8-4. And let's see if you can really build some momentum. Because if there is one pro, this roster is going to be really good next year too, specifically on defense. Look at all the young talent that you have on this football team. I mean, there's a lot of first-year guys. There's a lot of second-year guys who are some of Auburn's best football players, specifically on defense. And I think you got a great defensive coordinator in DJ Durkin. And so, to me, the conversation is fundamentally different than the conversation we're having with Mike Norvell at Florida State. The conversation with Mike Norvell is you're not winning on the football field, and there is almost no reason to believe that it's going to get better. When you look at Hugh Freeze, you say, all right, you're not winning on the football field, but there's a lot of reason to believe that Auburn is going to be a good football team at some point. There's a lot of reason to believe Auburn can be a good football team in the back half of 2025, right? Hugh Freeze has shown the ability to get the roster right. And again, I think there's a lot of Auburn fans that appreciate the fact that if you want to win in this conference, over half the battle is getting the roster right. There's a clear line in the sand between the teams in this conference that have the talent to compete and the teams that don't. And Hugh Freeze has taken Auburn from a team that does not have the talent to compete and has put them up in that category. He's gotten this roster right. This is one of the best rosters in the SEC. That matters when you're evaluating, is Hugh Freeze the guy or not at Auburn? Here are the cons. And there are a lot of cons, right? Because I want to be very clear. It's not like I'm getting up here and banging the table for Hugh Freeze to stay at Auburn. Number one, is he a guy that gives you any confidence that he can win close games? No, right? Because we have not seen that. Why is that important to dive into? Gone are the days, specifically in this conference, where you're going to be winning every single week, besides a few games by 3 scores. There's just a lot of parity in this conference, and what I'm trying to get at is coaching staffs, man, that they matter. The teams that are winning these close games are the teams that have coaches that can figure it out in the fourth quarter. I'm looking at Coach Drink at Missouri. I'm looking at Kirby Smart at Georgia. Do we believe that Hugh Freeze is the answer to winning these close games? We have been given zero evidence that he's that kind of guy. Heck, it feels very similar to Billy Napier at Florida, right? Because I look at Hugh Freeze and Billy Napier and say, during the offseason, they're running these programs the right way. Like, as much as everybody wanted to talk about Hugh Freeze bringing in a quarterback and bringing in dynamic wide receivers, look what he's done along the lines of scrimmage. I think Hugh Freeze knows what it looks like and knows what it takes to build a roster that can bang with anybody in the SEC. Just when it gets to Saturdays in the fall, we're not getting the job done. The second part is, holy smokes, we continue to miss on quarterbacks. What happens if Auburn chose Fernando Mendoza in the portal? You're probably looking at a team that has one loss at the worst, right? And that's almost a little bit of a defensive Hugh Freeze. Like, you're one quarterback away from competing for an SEC championship, but at the same time, that's on you, dude. Like, that's your job to go to the portal and find a quarterback that you think you can win with. You decided to hitch your wagon to Jackson Arnold. A lot of us had question marks about it, right? Because they took him pretty damn early in the process, and it's obviously not paying off. There are pros, right? That you can tell that this roster is where it needs to be, and it's continuing to get to where it needs to be. There are also a lot of cons, and so you weigh those pros and cons out and say, hey, want to hear my take, and this I probably should have led with this is just given to the end of 2025. What do we get out of firing Hugh Freeze? I mean, if you lose against Arkansas this weekend, maybe you do so. Like, can you give Hugh Freeze till the end of the year and say, hey, what if you catch some fire? What if you turn the corner? And a lot of times, just the flip getting switched, right? I'm a Michigan fan, and Michigan for so long under Jim Harbaugh was a good team, but they just couldn't win those big games, specifically against Ohio State. Then all of a sudden, you just turn the corner and the flip gets switched. Well, what happens if Hugh Freeze gets that? Because that's really what's lacking here. It's not a winning program right now. When the moments are the biggest, this team's not making plays to win. Sometimes it just takes a flip to get switched and get a little confidence, get the ball rolling. What if Hugh Freeze can do that over the back half of 2025? Now, if that flip does not get switched and Auburn finishes 6-6 or 5-7, which is very much a possibility as well, so open up the floor, man. Candidates that make sense for Auburn, and I immediately go to James Franklin. James Franklin gets a lot of heat for not being able to win the big game, and I think that he is very, very true. Like, the factually is backed up, right? Why is that? Why did James Franklin just never get over the hump at Penn State? I firmly believe that he had solid resources to build his roster. I don't think he had elite resources to build his roster. You go look at James Franklin and say, to me, that the biggest reason why he couldn't get over the hump is he was consistently hovering with a top 15 recruiting class in the country. In fact, during the last decade of James Franklin's tenure at Penn State, he only had two top 10 high school recruiting classes and used the portal very, very poorly, right? That's a con for James Franklin. I think we need coaches that know how to evaluate and make the good decisions in the portal. I'm not sure if Penn State gave him elite firepower to build elite rosters. He had the firepower in the brand to build good rosters, and James Franklin routinely put out good football teams, but I don't think he had the opportunity to build elite rosters. What if he gets that at Auburn? We all know Hugh Freeze is given that. I mean, if you get a coach to come in that can match the firepower he's given, Auburn's going to win a lot of football games. I think James Franklin could be that guy. And on top of that, he's already shown you that he can win in this conference at Vanderbilt. I think James Franklin would make a decent amount of sense. Another really hot name is John Sumrall. And look, there are pros and cons to John Sumrall. He's a hard guy not to believe. You talk about a guy that just exudes different energy than Hugh Freeze. John Sumrall's that guy. Really, really confident. He carries himself in a way that you kind of want to rally behind, of which I'm not really sure Hugh Freeze does. My biggest question with John Sumrall is that, I mean, he's got very little big time job experience. You know, the biggest job that he's held, he's a linebackers coach at Ole Miss. He was the co-defensive coordinator at Kentucky. I firmly believe it looks a little different when you're running a program like Auburn. John Summerall doesn't have that experience. Do we want to take a risk on a guy that hasn't really been given the keys to the car of a program like Auburn? That's really the only knock, because everything else about John Summerall, you like a lot. You best believe that. Here's the last one that'd be interesting. What about, and this is not the last one, because again, I'll firmly say this. I think this job's going to be really attractive. Fran Brown at Syracuse. Roster building, man. I mean, there's no better recruiter than Fran Brown. Just go look at his track record when he worked for Kirby Smart at Georgia. And so you bring Fran Brown to Auburn, recruiting the state of Georgia, recruiting the state of Alabama, recruiting the state of Florida, the states that you need to get right when you're at Auburn. I feel very confident that Fran Brown can do that. Here's the other thing. The reason you might be a little shied away is, well, what is he as a head coach? We know what he is as a recruiter. What's he look like as a head man? Won 10 football games at Syracuse year one. I'm from Rochester, New York. I know how difficult it is to win 10 football games at Syracuse. Fran Brown did that. And heck, he was well on his way to winning a lot of football games in 2025 as well, before his quarterback one went down with an injury against Clemson. Fran Brown, at the very least, Fran Brown would be really exciting for us to talk about in the offseason, because you know he's going to hammer the high school ranks, and you know he's going to bring in talent through the transfer portal. Fran Brown would be an interesting one too. A lot of names would be interesting. I think you are out of your mind if you don't consider Auburn one of the best jobs in the country right now, because just look at the resources that Hugh Freeze was given. Those are my takes on the situation. I'll say it, just hand up. I'm rooting for Hugh Freeze to kind of win out here and keep the job in 2020. Now, I know a lot of Auburn fans will disagree with that. I think he's doing everything right besides winning on the football field. And I think sometimes that just takes, hey, it just got to click. And once it clicks, I think this program can be really good under Hugh Freeze. But if it doesn't click and they continue to lose, you know you have the opportunity to get a really good coach coming in. We'll pause it there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.